they don't care what we say, especially if what we say and what we do are not aligned. They will always look at what we do over what we say. Hopefully some of the things that we say make an impact on them, but they're only really going to make an impact on them if they're aligned with how we show up in the world.
Ever feel like you suck at this job? Motherhood, I mean. Have too much anxiety and not enough patience? Too much yelling, not enough play? There's no manual, no village, no guarantees. The stakes are high. We want so badly to get it right. But this is survival mode. We're just trying to make it to bedtime. So if you're full of mom guilt, your temper scares you, you feel like you're screwing everything up, and you're afraid to admit any of those things out loud, this podcast is for you. This is Failing Motherhood. I'm Danielle Bettman, and each week we'll chat with a mom ready to be real, sharing her insecurities, her fears, her failures, and her wins. We do not have it all figured out. That's not the goal. The goal is to remind you, you are the mom your kids need. They need what you have, you are good enough, and you're not alone. I hope you pop in earbuds, somehow sneak away, and get ready to hear some hope from the trenches. You belong here, friend. We're so glad you're here. Hey, it's Danielle. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Failing Motherhood. I am your positive discipline certified parenting coach for parents of strong-willed kids, ages 2 to 10. And we get to go on a really, really fun ride today. I have a special treat for you. And it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to do one of these. And today's interview is with a client of mine, a family that graduated from my program a few months ago. And you get to have a true behind-the-scenes take of what parenting a strong-willed child looks like at someone else's house. Today, I have a conversation for you with Laura and Mike, 2 full-time working parents that live in Minneapolis. They have 3 kids, a daughter that's 8, a son who's 5, and a daughter who's 7 months old. And they dive right in to our conversation, sharing what parenting felt like and looked like just a few months ago. And the big buzzword was volatility. A lot of volatility, a lot of high volume, unpredictability, big emotions, just losing it on the daily, both parents and kids, feeling very mismatched in their perspective of, mom and dad, of being able to come into moments and read the room and read the situation, having a shared kind of understanding. They both felt like they didn't have toolkits. They both felt like they were not experts in parenting and just feeling not only lost, but the word they used was powerless, feeling very powerless when really they still had a lot of power, and how powerless might their kids have felt at the same time. Really just knowing what they were doing isn't working, and now they understand why. But they share their barriers that they had to overcome to get support. And then you get to hear firsthand what really impacted them and stuck with them through the work that they did on themselves through their time inside Wholeheartedly CALM, my 3-month group coaching program. And the 3 pillars of that program are communication, core needs, and composure. And so you come out feeling much more calm and confident, feeling like your kids' needs for control and belonging, love, and connection are met, and having a huge decrease in amount and intensity and frequency and duration of meltdowns overall. And so the things that we talked about in this episode, they talked a lot about the power of language and how impactful it can be that small tweaks make towards cooperation. They talked about the feeling of empowerment that they found through a lot of self-reflection and kind of self-criticism, and how powerful it felt to have shame-free conversations around anger. They also shared just how amazing it feels to get to enjoy their kids more again, and how much their kids enjoy being enjoyed. Who doesn't, right? And the big thing we kind of end on that I feel like is so important to reflect on and sit with is it really does come down to it matters way more what we do than what we say as parents. And how our example, our modeling, and our roles really just come down to kind of our way of being and how we're living our lives and how we're handling ourselves and how we're handling conflict and all of that. So you get to really see what reckoning with that looks like for a family just like yours in Laura and Mike. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into this conversation. And if it resonates with you, and if you really feel like you are ready to stop feeling helpless, stop feeling powerless, stop feeling all the volatility, and do or die, let's do the work it takes to be on the other side, having so many more tools, feeling like you have a united front, you're on the same page, and have way better management of your composure and capacity overall. Let's talk. Find those links in the show notes. Go ahead and watch that masterclass with your partner, or have your partner listen to this and see if it resonates with them as well. And then we can go ahead and talk more. Okay. So here we go. Here is my conversation with Laura and Mike. Welcome to Failing Motherhood. My name is Danielle Bettman, and on today's episode, I am joined by previous clients of my program, Laura and Mike. Thank you guys so much for being here. It is such a huge compliment. It means so much to me, and it's super fun too because we actually got to meet in real life just a couple weeks ago, which is really rare doing virtual work with people from everywhere. So I'm excited to see you again.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, we're really happy to do it.
I so appreciate it. And I know it is kind of a whole thing with technology and it can be uncomfortable. So we'll just pretend it's just us and we're just recapping. So for those that don't know you, give us a quick update. Who's in your family? What are you guys up to these days? What is your flavor of family?
Well, Mike and I met in college, although we didn't date for many years after that. We were reconnected through a mutual friend and hit it off. We were long distance for the first 2 years of our relationship. And then he moved to Minneapolis, where I live, and we started our life together. And we have an 8-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and a 7-month-old daughter. And we spend a lot of time together. We're all very close, but we have a lot of personalities in our family.
Yeah. And we also both work full time and have, want to try to at least have a little bit of a personal life outside of that as well. So, yeah.
What's that?
It's a lot to manage. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes. And what do you guys do professionally?
I'm an attorney.
I am a web developer.
Okay, awesome. Give us a quick glimpse into your kids' personalities.
Well, our 8-year-old is a very strong personality. She is the oldest and definitely wants to lead the pack and lead the charge in all of the things that we do, has a lot of opinions. Our second child is 5, and he also has some strong will, but definitely, since he's the second child, is, usually forced to do the things that his big sister wants to do. And the baby, it's hard to tell,
Too soon.
She's just started making noises. So yeah, it's really hard to say.
But you can tell, it's funny to see her personality develop because she really likes to get her siblings' attention. She's only 7 months old, but she's constantly trying to make them laugh. And she is not afraid to use her voice when she wants to be acknowledged or heard. So I think it's safe to say, even though we're still figuring her out, that we have 3 strong personalities in our house.
She's going to hold her own.
Oh, yes.
We love that for her.
Yeah.
So just to make sure we have the human element as well, I always like to pre-qualify all of my guests I have on Failing Motherhood. So have you ever felt like you were failing parenting?
Oh, for sure.
Almost every day.
Then you're part of the club. You're my people.
Solidarity.
So let's go back. I know you can't remember what you had for dinner last night, and you're up at all hours of the night right now. So we were just recapping how our memory is hazy. But if you can go back to what you remember from 3, 6, 9 months ago, how would you describe how parenting felt or what your kind of overall parenting approach was at the time?
Well, 6 months ago, we had a 1 month old. But even prior to that, we had been feeling stretched very thin. As Mike mentioned, our 8-year-old is very, very strong willed, but she can also be really volatile and quick to anger. She's brilliant and really funny and really wants what she wants. But I think she's a person who really wanted or craves control and autonomy. And when you're 7, as she was at the time, that can kind of bump up against the reality of safety and family dynamics and all of that. And so she was just we were having a lot of kind of frustrations with her volatility, and then our 5-year-old at that time, who was I guess 4 at the time, he had just changed preschools, had a new little sister, had recently become a middle child, and he was expressing a lot of his frustrations through physical aggression, biting, and a lot of not listening, a lot of the both of them just completely ignoring us, or clocking that we had said something, we had asked them to do something, and just refusing to do it. And we were struggling with how to communicate with them in an effective way. And I think it caused a lot of tension in our relationship, because even though Mike and I communicate really well, we get along really well, we genuinely enjoy each other's company, we were not aligned on how to deal with behavioral issues. And it caused a lot of tension for us. We had, I often felt like Mike was too quick to anger or wasn't handling things in the way that I felt was the right way to handle them. And then I think, I don't want to speak for you, Mike, but there was some resentment. Like, neither of us were coming from a place of knowledge or learning on this subject. We were both just kind of figuring it out as we went along. So we really felt like we needed some support and some common ground to navigate this stuff in a healthier and more effective way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'd say in terms of I don't, it's hard to say like what our parenting style is because we had never ascribed to a particular school of parenting or something like that. So it's more just that we didn't have a framework and we would kind of butt heads about how to deal with certain situations. I think a lot of that was just a reaction to like the stress of not having a plan or not having a system or a lens through which to view how to handle these things that would arise on a day-to-day basis.
So I think at one point, I don't even remember what the particular catalyst was, but there was just an evening, I think, that was really just a lot of fighting and power struggles and very volatile. And I remember sitting on the couch with Mike after we had gotten all the kids to bed, and I just started looking for resources, looking for something. And I stumbled upon Danielle's website. I looked at the website and I looked the first few minutes of the masterclass, and I said, Mike, will you watch this with me? And then we can decide if this feels right. And he agreed. And so we just sat down one evening and watched the masterclass, that first offering on the website, and it connected to both of us. I think I went into it kind of feeling like my way was more effective, or I knew more what we should do than Mike did. But watching that masterclass was really eye-opening for me as well, because I realized that some of the strategies I was deploying maybe were kind of kicking the can down the road in terms of getting the results I wanted in the short term, but long term. An example would be like proposing incentives or negotiating all of the time about what we were going to do. And it was helpful for me to recognize that we both had some real learning to do to come up with a better plan.
Yeah, you're not alone in that at all, for sure. And what were the things that you did know that were important to you as parents, or when you imagine being parents? What were some of those things where you're like, this is kind of our thread of integrity, and there's a gap between kind of where we thought we'd be or where we want to be and how we're currently showing up?
I'm not sure I ever really pictured how I thought I would be as a parent, to be honest, like before becoming a parent. I mean, I know a lot of people probably do, but just for me was not something that I put a lot of like mental energy into. But I definitely, there's sometimes when you're in the moment with your children and things are not going well, and it can feel really stressful, and you just kind of feel like I'm not doing this right. There's something is missing here, and I know that I need to make a change. And I think definitely we were both feeling that at different times, and yeah, just seemed like the right thing to do, to kind of take a class so we could both get on the same page and figure out how to do this together.
Yeah, for me, I think, I'm not someone who's naturally very quick to anger, and the degree of volatility in our household did not meet my desires for how my family life would look or what my parenting journey would look like. I felt like we were always kind of on the edge of a blow up, or always sort of navigating a potential screaming session, whether it was the kids screaming or us screaming at them. And I don't like that. I want to be able to talk through issues, and I also want to be able to get out the door when we need to get out the door. And the fact that maybe not every, but enough of our sort of like day-to-day necessity things were being consumed by potential conflict was really hard for me. And I just wanted a better way to talk to my kids and have them hear me. I also don't want to be someone who's constantly saying no. I wanted to figure out a more natural way to set up a dynamic where we were getting done what needed to get done, doing what needed to happen, not having to do so much management all the time. Because I think part of the problem is that we were caught in this dynamic where it was like already adversarial. So our strong-willed firstborn, she wants to get out the door earlier too, but when you both come to the moment, you're already sort of like in a conflict mode because you know that every day getting out the door is a fight, then everyone starts off a little prickly, and it's so much harder to do what needs to be done. And so I think we needed to do some resetting of our approach in order to get her to a point where she could come downstairs in the morning and not be gearing up for a fight, just so we could all kind of reframe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that volatility, it's not fun to live through. And also it takes so much energy, and it leaves you with less energy to do the other things you want to do, to have fun with your kids and to enjoy each other's company.
And it's not fun for them either.
No.
Like they're reacting that way because they don't have the tools to react differently when they're stressed, or when they're, when things aren't going the way they want them to. And so I think really realizing the only way this is going to change is if Mike and I change. That will set the standard. The kids can, even if they don't change at all, even if they keep doing what they're doing, we have the power, and in fact are the only people that can reset the dynamic going into each day.
Yes. Yes. That's a powerful realization in and of itself. And, sometimes it takes a little bit to kind of even get to that point, because you're working by process of elimination of trying to figure out what is wrong? What are we missing? What is happening here? Why is this so much harder than I thought it was going to be? Or why are we walking on eggshells? Why is everything a big deal? Why can't we just say no and move on? And just, it's not. And you maybe wait with time. Surely it'll get better, and it doesn't. And here we are.
And it's so, I think the point at which we finally sought out support was when we got to the point where we just felt so powerless and so disempowered in our own house. Like, we didn't know how to change the dynamic, but we knew the dynamic was not working. It's not a nice way to live, to feel totally disempowered about how things happen in your life each day. And when I think we could acknowledge that, then you can also think a little more compassionately about what your kids are going through, because we felt like we had no control, and we had so much more control than they did over how everything went in our house.
Yeah, great point. You can only imagine the powerlessness that they must feel in some moments.
It's got to be really hard.
Yeah, but hard to empathize with too when you're feeling right down there with them.
Yeah.
So as you were having these conversations and, doing that Googling, did you have any hesitations that may have stopped you? Because I know you were in maternity leave at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what did that practically look like as you made the decision to move forward?
Well, I think money is always a hesitation, not knowing if something's going to be effective or not, but still kind of committing money and time really is a huge issue for it. We have so little time. And I think that's anytime we had talked previously about doing some sort of class, we would say, well, when are we going to do this? We don't even have time to get the amount of sleep that we need. We barely have time to eat meals. How are we going to carve out space for something else?
Yeah. And I think I just pretty recently started a new job and was worried, like, is this going to be, are they going to be upset that I'm taking time during the workday to like do a parenting thing? I mean, it turned out they were totally fine with it, but I don't know. Just there's a lot of roadblocks you can throw up in your way when you're nervous about something instead of just going for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're so right. It's all that perception of either confirmation bias of, it's not the right time because, or the opposite, this is the right time because, and, using almost the same thing to go either way. So looking back, was it the right time?
Yeah.
Yeah. The right time is now. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think anytime we had done it would have been the right time. I mean, for me, we went back and forth. I'm thinking about your point, Danielle, that like you can have the same piece of feedback and it can support either position you want to take. At the time I was on maternity leave, and so it made sense because my job's really demanding, and there were more days of the class I would have had to have missed had I been working at that time. So it's helpful for me to do it during maternity leave. But also we had a newborn and our lives were so sort of unpredictable. There wasn't really a schedule we were following. Things felt really kind of frenetic and messy. And I remember Mike saying, maybe this isn't the right time to do this because we have all this other stuff going on. And
Which is what I say about everything that we try to do, pretty much.
so this is actually, that's funny you say that. This is a constant thing in our relationship where I'll say, we should do this thing. And Mike says, let's wait a year. And I'll say, no, we have to do it now. And then time negotiation we're always involved in.
Yeah.
That's valid.
But with something like this, I mean, really, like the time that you're in is the time to do it, because the time that you're in is, if you're seeking out the support, you need the support. And if you need the support, you need it now. There's no wrong time to make your family work better.
Right. And I know your kids were going through a lot of transitions at the same time, whether that was babysitter or a different after school program or a new school, or, this was changing with mom's work schedule. And then she went back to work. And then there was all these other things happening at the same time when you're sleep deprived and, the kids are adjusting to a new sibling still and all of that. And you could definitely use that to say, let's get our feet underneath us again, then we'll take on something else. Or what you ended up doing is that this is even more of a reason to get the help now so that we can navigate these transitions with support.
Yeah.
And then you had kind of prescriptions for each one of those moments as you went along.
Yeah, I think ultimately we just realized like what we're doing is not working. This is not working. Why don't we find something that works better? And then all the other hard stuff will be easier, or at least mitigated by just trying to function better together.
Yeah. That was the hope. And I feel like it panned out pretty well, honestly. I mean,
still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Everything's still hard, but it seems more manageable. So
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really know why technically, but yeah, just I feel happy that we did it when we did it. We probably should have done it sooner, honestly, but
that's okay. Like we said, now's better than never, for sure. And how would you describe Wholeheartedly Calm, being inside of it, to someone who's never heard of it?
I mean, it's a community and it's also a class. So there is the class curriculum that you go through, which I felt like, Danielle, you did a great job with making it a manageable amount of work and also have it be stuff that you can also kind of do as you go and kind of come back and reference later with like the workbook and everything. There's a lot of materials that we get to kind of outline the process. And then the community aspect, I think, is great because it gives you a chance to kind of talk to other parents who are going through similar things that you are and commiserate with them and, try to help each other out.
Yeah, the curriculum provides a framework. I think for us, it was really helpful as we went. First of all, we went through the program together. So even though we were listening to the modules or reading the materials separately, we would try to talk about them each week. And it gave us a common vocabulary for identifying the problems that we were having and figuring out more effective strategies for communicating with our kids and with each other, signaling to each other that we were kind of nearing the end of our rope on a particular issue or whatever. I mean, it just gave us a common language. So that framework was really essential. And then the community aspect of it gave us a forum for actually thinking about applying those tools in real terms. And not only in the context of our lives, but looking at our other community members who maybe had kids who were older or were dealing with issues that we hadn't yet confronted, but were going to, and understanding sort of how they applied these tools in their lives was really critical. And like Mike said, just the solidarity of, I think having a strong-willed child, I mean, so many people do. It's a beautiful thing to have a strong-willed child. We always said our kids are going to be so great as adults. The things that make them so great as adults make them really hard to parent when they're young. But, it can feel really isolating sometimes, especially when you see other parents interacting with kids who are really well behaved, or your kids' friends come over and they just have a different dynamic. But having a community of people who also had brilliant, interesting, charismatic, strong-willed kids that were giving them hell helped us to feel less isolated.
Definitely. Because I think also there are a lot of people with, strong-willed has got to be a spectrum, right? So,
Mhm.
All kids are tough in some ways, but I think a lot of people just don't really talk about it unless you get to know them really well, like talk about what they struggle with. It's not, I don't know, maybe it's not considered play conversation or something, but people want to project this image of themselves that is more put together than they actually are. But I don't know, for me, it's like really nice to be able to just get real with other parents about what they're struggling with, because I think we all have struggles.
Well, and having a forum, I have a lot of close friends, and we talk about our kids, we talk about our lives and our challenges. And I felt like Mike's friends didn't do that as much. Mike has a lot of close friends too, but when they get together, they're talking about other stuff. They're not talking
Yeah,
about their kids. And so I felt like another point of tension between us when we were, prior to seeking out support, was that I just felt like Mike didn't have a lot of perspective about the stuff our kids were going through. And so for him, it felt so hard when they were being really challenging because it felt abnormal or it felt like an anomaly. And for me, I felt like, oh, I have three friends whose kids have gone through the same thing. But having a space where there were dads there too, and the whole point was to talk about our kids and the challenging issues with our kids, and to recognize the ways that dads experience these challenges differently or how it can impact relationships. I think, it was really illuminating for me to see that. And I think it was a valuable part of the community.
definitely.
Yeah. No, that's rare. You're not going to have the same news feeds, the same friend, group chats, the same type of exposure to that perspective that you need to kind of address the fears that you might have, or like the worst case scenarios that you're trying to prevent in your kids. And every day we're kind of just taking this information in and trying to make the best decisions we can from them. And we don't know what we don't know. And if we only know one other hard kid and my kid isn't as bad as their kid, or my kid is so much worse than their kid, like you're going to make a lot of assumptions that might not be super helpful or healthy or accurate, especially if the other partner is not seeing that at all.
Yeah, I really think that's true. Yeah, I think you can make some bad assumptions that affect the way you interact with your children, and it's important to try to avoid that for sure.
Yeah. And it's not like, let's not, give the perception that we're just bashing on our kids all together.
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh, I had it worse. Oh, I had it even worse. That's not what the community is doing. We're just able to really bring the most raw parts of our heart to a safe place where we can kind of reckon with it in real time.
Yeah.
Right, because everyone's there because they love their kids so much that they're trying to
Yes.
figure out how to interact with them in a way that is more loving and more effective and honors the complicated and individual and strong-willed people that they are. Everyone's there because they love their kids and they want to be better parents.
Yeah.
So being able to be honest about our challenges and the things that we struggle with in a supportive community serves that goal, gets us closer to it.
You're right. The understanding of the level of assumptions you come in with, knowing about the other families in that room, really creates that foundation for those kind of breakthrough gems and, helpful conversations. And 2 weeks ago in the current group, you weren't there anymore, but we were talking about, well, why do I have to put all this effort in when my parents didn't? Why is it so important for me to stay calm and be patient and, be kind to their emotions? And then this parent felt safe to be like, help me out here. I just really want, I'm having some hard limitations around this. And we ended up having the best conversation, just validating our own struggles with kind of the unfairness of it all, the difficulty of it all, and just how many big feelings come up in us, let alone, having to deal with all of those and remember what to do with our kids and hold space for theirs and, understanding what's changed in the world. And it was just a really, really cool conversation. I can't imagine happening anywhere else with this level of dedication and commitment to the process that these other families are coming in with. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, and I remember when we were in the program, we got into a really great conversation about anger and losing our cool with our kids in a way that is really hard to talk about with other people. I mean, there's a lot of shame involved in that, of course.
So much shame.
Nobody wants to be that parent, but everybody is that parent sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And to be able to talk to other people honestly about times when we had things we were angry about just in general, or times that we had not kind of brought our best selves to the table and interacting with our kids, was really supportive and just really beneficial, I think.
Here's the deal. If your child is sensitive and smart, yet loses it, is clingy or aggressive with you at home, they can go 0 to 60 over the smallest things, like when they just don't get their way, nothing changes their mind, and they can't seem to get over it, and you know what you're doing isn't working, and siblings are starting to suffer. You could go to therapy yourself and take your child to therapy and follow all the experts and ask your family and friends for advice and take a course and set up a calm down corner and read all the parenting books and still feel defeated. It's time. It's time to learn the missing pieces of invaluable insight about their temperament that unlocks compassion in you and understanding of how to work with the way they're wired. It's time to communicate in new ways, like a hostage negotiator, to get through to them and cultivate cooperation with confidence. And it's time to eliminate the behaviors that are working to gain control and attention at their root, rather than playing whack-a-mole. Calm and Confident, the masterclass, is for you. There, you will master the kind and firm approach your strong-willed child needs without crushing their spirit or walking on eggshells. In this free training, I share the 4 critical kind and firm scripts that unlock cooperation in every situation, how to eliminate behaviors at their root, and the path to solidifying the open and honest relationship that you want to have with your child down the road. So go to parentingwholeheartedly.com/confident to access this exclusive on-demand training immediately. That's parentingwholeheartedly.com/confident. That link will be in the show notes. So now that you're on the other side, parenting is still hard. It's always going to stay hard if you're doing it right. If you're trying to be intentional or mindful at all, then, that barometer is still going to be there. But what has changed from 6 months ago, 3 months ago to now?
I think our relationship has changed because now we have like a common vocabulary and common lens to look at this through. And I think honestly, maybe that's been the biggest difference is just now we're really on the same page about it, about how we want to parent our kids and how we should be trying to handle any situation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we're certainly better at supporting each other and recognizing that our different reactions to our kids' behavior is not something that puts us at odds with each other. It's something that we understand a little better now because we've devoted the time to thinking about it and talking about it a lot. And so the moments where we need someone to show up for us, or we need to show up for each other, it just is more streamlined than it used to be because we know what we need. We know when the other person comes to a situation where things are tense, that we're not coming to kind of criticize or take over. We're coming to offer support and to really be a team in our approach with our kids. And I remember when we were midway through the program, there was a family that was graduating, and they were asked a question about what they had learned, and they said, "You're the person that's going to change in this process. It's not your kid. Your kid's going to keep doing the same stuff they always do. You're going to be the one that's different at the end." And that really resonated for me, and it's very true. But we've recognized that our changes, the ways that we kind of shift the dynamic or shift our reaction when things are getting hard, can change the whole situation. I mean, they can just totally redirect how our family ecosystem functions. Things are still hard, but we kind of approach them with a little more patience usually, and with a better set of our own resources, and with a much broader set of skills than we had before.
Yeah. And I know we mentioned volatility a lot at the beginning. What has shifted on that realm?
Well, I mean, there's still volatile moments for sure. Emotions still happen. So I think similar to what Laura said, it's just more about the way that we react to it that has changed. And so I think there's ways that you can react to it that make it kind of not throw more fuel on the fire, just kind of like you're either weathering it or you're trying to figure out a way to cope that will, kind of quiet the situation down. But I think that, in general, it's more just you learn not to just accept it in a way, There's a certain amount you can't change. So, and just knowing that this is how kids are and this isn't normal, kind of.
You don't need to hit the fire alarm on the wall and run out screaming with your hair on fire. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we don't need to match the energy. I think we've recognized that just because someone's losing their mind doesn't mean that we need to go into it with that same sense of urgency or intensity.
Yeah. I think urgency is like a running thing for me, like a running theme is just, I feel like that the urgency is a big part of what pushes me to react in a certain way that is not the way I want to be reacting, or just the idea of having a time limit is very stressful for me. So, and I feel like kind of letting go of some of that urgency and realizing that this is not actually urgent. You have time is really, really helpful.
Yeah, and through the process, we recognized a lot of our own triggers. There's a lot of self-reflection. What are the things that make you anxious or that make you uncomfortable in parenting? And our daughter, when she would really flip out, our eldest, she would get really mean and volatile. And my instinct was, I don't want to be around you right now. But then that would trigger in her this sense of, oh my gosh, they're leaving. And then she would get really clingy. And I realized that sense of like someone physically clinging to me was very triggering for me. And then I felt trapped, and it just kind of spiraled into an unhelpful dynamic that didn't feel good for anybody. And so, I realized that there were some things I needed to do on the front end when I saw things moving in that direction, to say to her, like, hey, I really love you. I'm going to be back. I know that you're having a hard time. but I just need a minute. I just need 1 minute. I'm not leaving you. I wouldn't just try to bolt. I would kind of set things up for her so that she knew that I was coming back. I just needed a second. And so it got, when I did some of that work on the front end, then it got easier for her to just let me go and take the time I needed so that I didn't feel so overwhelmed emotionally in those moments. And I think, in reflecting on ourselves, we also reflected on our kids and thinking about who they really are and what they need and how those personality traits might manifest in volatile ways when they weren't kind of having some of their core desires or needs met, And so for our oldest, she really has a need for autonomy. She wants to be independent. She wants to do things. And so we started thinking about, like, dinner time was a real trigger point because nobody would eat anything and everyone would complain and then everyone was hungry and it was just a mess. And so we got her a kid safe knife so she could help prepare food at dinner time. And then we started asking our kids, well, do you want to help with the meal plan? Do you want to go grocery shopping? Little things like that we had the foresight to do ahead of time actually really helped those trigger points like dinner time, because we sort of set it up a little differently so that their needs for autonomy or their needs for independent decision making were already sort of being fulfilled before the choke point.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times they choose not to like help with dinner or go grocery shopping, but it somehow still takes the volatility out because they've made that choice. They've been presented with an opportunity and they've made a choice. And just like the act of making a choice makes you feel like you have more control.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Some of the stuff that you teach in the course, I feel like, is definitely like sort of Jedi mind trick type stuff. It's just like, you're it's just the vocabulary that you use, like wording something one way versus another, can actually be really impactful in a way that's almost hard to comprehend, like at least for me.
But there's also so many examples that make it easier to comprehend, like thinking about interacting with a boss. And if a boss asked me to do something in a demanding way versus, hey, could you, we have this need. Do you think you could contribute? Whatever. Of course, I'm going to react more positively to the version in which someone is respecting me and recognizing that I can choose to say yes or no, and framing things in a way that recognizes that I contribute to the community in a particular way instead of just making a demand, which is so often, I think, when we're not being self-critical, how we interact with our kids. Something needs to be done, we tell them to do it. I mean, I think a lot of people would push back against that if it was sort of how they were always interacting with an authority figure.
Right. Yeah. There's something innate in all of us that just doesn't like being told what to do. The end. Yeah.
Or I think, Danielle, you've also said examples of, if your partner said the laundry needs to get folded, go fold the laundry. I'm like, well, no, I do what I want to do.
Right. I already had my whole night planned. No, yeah.
Yeah. And kids have lives. They have lives and plans and expectations, and they're people. So we have to interact with them as whole people.
Yeah, the tough part is they're not real people yet, but they're becoming real people. But you need to treat them as real people, even though they can't, sometimes reciprocate that because their brains aren't developed yet. So that's, I think, the tough part about this is, it's hard to treat people with respect when they consistently are disrespectful to you, or, maybe not disrespectful, but yeah, it's not always a two-way street, but you got to keep trying.
You bring up a super valuable point that even my husband brings up from time to time, which is we would not take the toxicity of almost like the emotional abuse we get from our kids from any other relationship.
Yeah, no.
And there's a big part of our own defense mechanism that comes up when we're like, I don't deserve to be treated like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why would I stay in the same room as you? Why would I want to be the bigger person in this situation? Because no one wants to just push all that down and be like, it's fine. I'm a punching bag. I'm a doormat. That's really unhealthy on a very objective level. So there is an element of really understanding, am I being a pushover, permissive parent and nobody's listening to me and I'm just supposed to swallow that and say, it's fine? Or is the way that I'm kind of modeling a foundation what's best for them at their developmentally appropriate level? And yet it's okay that I lose it sometimes and have my own needs and have a limited capacity in this time. Like knowing which is which sooner than later, or even in hindsight, is critical for your mental health, I think, as a parent.
And your confidence, and I think
Yeah.
that's something we talked about a lot in the course, that if you know something to be right for your child, you know that this is the right thing for them to do, you can lay that boundary with confidence. You can say, in our family, we don't do this, or, we're not going to do this right now. Here's all the choices you have around that thing, but here's the line. And being able to make that declaration or set those boundaries with confidence is very empowering for you, and also empowering for your kids, because it sets a kind of safe structure that they can depend on and gives them autonomy within the structure. And I think there's so often this misconception, because, I don't know, maybe because we don't necessarily all have kind of a strong foundation for how we want to parent. There's this misconception that it's either sort of this traditional, strict, you do this because I say you do this, or it's really permissive, it's very gentle. Everything is focused on the kids' emotional needs and validation. And that's sort of,
if they cry, I failed.
Right. Like there's those two poles. And I don't want to live in either of those worlds personally. And I think this course and the framework that you developed was so helpful for us, because it gave us more confidence to set boundaries and be clear about what we expected in our family, but also made our kids feel more respected. So everyone's kind of coming to the table in a spirit of teamwork, and there's nothing like overly permissive about it. The expectation is that everyone show up in a good way, and recognizing that not everyone can do that all the time. We just interact more pleasantly together. Everyone's kind of respected and acknowledged. And part of that is being accountable.
Yeah. That was a really, really great way of kind of illustrating what that looks like at your house for others to kind of conceptualize, because you're right. If you don't come in with that foundation of this is where I know I'm too hot, this is how I know I'm too cold, this is, what just right looks like, you could genuinely have no idea where you're at on that scale and just keep kind of jumping to extremes or haphazardly throwing spaghetti at a wall on a day-to-day basis because of a tip you saw once from somewhere. And then genuinely, it's becoming very unpredictable for your kids. They don't know which you they're going to get on a daily basis, or how patient you're going to be, or what's going to tip you off. You don't know what's going to throw them off because they're struggling for control or really structure, understanding what day to day is even the norm around here. I'm just trying to figure it out, right? I'm new to this world.
Yeah. I mean, we're all new to the world of parenting when we join it, right? I mean, we both had excellent parents. We grew up feeling loved and respected, and we had great role models, and we are very, very fortunate for that. And we still started parenting and didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't really read any books or anything. Like, we didn't really, we're just winging it,
Yeah, no, that's most of us. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So for those maybe new to the podcast, new to me on this journey right alongside you guys, what other takeaways haven't we mentioned that, you would have loved to kind of figure out sooner than later?
I think one of the most impactful things that I keep coming back to are those analogies that you would do. And I don't remember which module it was in, but you would give these great analogies about, imagine if you spoke the way you're speaking to your children to your partner, and how do you think that would go over? And those kinds of analogies, it seems so simple, it's almost ridiculous. But then when you actually think about it, you're like, wow, yeah, if someone talked to me the way that I'm talking to my kid, I would not be okay with it. And obviously that's not always avoidable. Sometimes you lose your temper and you are short with your family. And I think that goes for everybody in the family. But I think just try to be more mindful about how you're being perceived is like really helpful.
Kind of like the power of tone and just language and kind of the semantics in general of just how powerful those small tweaks can be. Yeah.
Because we're leading a team of people, right? I mean, that's what we're essentially doing is we're trying to, the kids are looking to us for guidance, even though it seems like they're not sometimes. Yeah.
Seems like it's a mutiny and they're walking in the opposite direction, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, every situation that we show up to, whether it's with our kids or someone else, we play at least a 50% role in that situation generally. So if we can change how we react or be more mindful of ourselves in those moments, that's going to shape the trajectory of the situation. And I think that was a huge thing for both of us in the course, was giving us a different kind of roadmap for how to handle certain situations so we could kind of show up a little more prepared, but also to be self-critical of our own emotional reactions and understand ourselves and our kids a little better. That's hard work. And it's uncomfortable to look at yourself. But when you recognize that any situation you're in, you're the one showing up to it. And if you can change your way of being in it, it's going to change the course of the encounter. It's really empowering ultimately. And when we don't do that work, we oftentimes take it out on our kids. They deal with the consequences of it. And when we do the work, when we are self-critical and we develop the skills and we work on it, we're giving them an example of how to do that in their adult lives. And I think I said this on the course, Mike is quicker to anger than I am. And so is our daughter, our eldest child. And I feel like we talked to both of them, but she's a little older. We talked to her more about the course, what we were doing, what we were learning. And she was really interested in it. But I think, it was way more meaningful for her to watch Mike go through the process of like developing an awareness of anger and skills to deal with being quick to anger than it would have been for her just to watch me go through it, because she has that same
Temperament. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Yes, she has the same temperament. And so she got a great example of someone struggling with and working on and finding tools to deal with something that she also struggles with, watching you do it, Mike, which is hugely valuable.
That's so powerful. It says so much. And you can't fake that. And you probably couldn't have gotten that same level of, intensity or seriousness or impact without really taking it on and saying like, all right, now or never, let's do this. Let's do it hard and fast.
Just go for it, man. Just go.
Yeah. But that's really cool that she was at that influential age as well, where you can just kind of talk about what you're doing out loud. And it creates so much of like a magnetic sense of authenticity in your leadership by being able to be vulnerable and being able to be honest and make apologies and being able to be real about, yeah, this is still really hard for me and I messed up. I'm going to keep trying. Here's my new tactic. Hold me to it. That level of accountability of talking that through with her, that's going to sit with her for sure. More than would a good lecture.
Right.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, they don't care what we say, especially if what we say and what we do are not aligned. They will always look at what we do over what we say.
Oof.
Hopefully some of the things that we say make an impact on them, but they're only really going to make an impact on them if they're aligned with how we show up in the world.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mic drop. No, truly, that's a really, I think, impactful kind of thing to sit with, and leads us to kind of our last question. The last question I used to kind of sum up all of the interviews. So I'll ask you that same one I ask everybody else to close up our time. How are you the parents your kids need?
I think I'm confident and loving.
That's such a big question, Danielle. I mean, it's a great question, and I've listened to your podcast enough that I really should have anticipated having to answer it a little more than I did.
Everybody's a little caught off guard. I know.
I think I'm the parent my kids need because I see them for all of who they are, all of the complexity and complication and beauty they bring to the table. I don't need them to be anything other than who they are. And I want to give them an example of love that exceeds and transcends anybody else's expectations of them.
Yeah, that's what they need. They're lucky to have you guys.
We're lucky to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. No, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for investing in yourselves, knowing that you are worthy of that level of support. And, your kids are so much benefited from it. You can see that already, but that impact is going to continue to build momentum all the years to come.
Yeah.
We actually have been speaking a lot lately about how impressed we are with our kids recently. They've just, they show up, they identify a challenge or a problem in their lives, and they are working through how to handle it in a way that they're proud of. And
that's so cool to see.
Really capable. And it has just, going through this process has made us enjoy our experience as a family so much more. And because we've kind of cut out a lot of the conflict points, or at least figured out how to navigate them more fluidly, we just get to enjoy them a lot more. And they enjoy being enjoyed,
Yeah, who wouldn't?
We have much more fun together.
I totally agree.
Oh, I love that for you guys. I love that. Well, I'm so glad you have, many more days ahead of you with them in your house, but now you are empowered and equipped and more confident. And we so appreciate your level of transparency and honesty and being able to share from your real life place of what it looks like in your four walls with your three kids. And so good to see you again. I know you're in the graduate community, so I'll get to circle back once again. But thanks for taking the time. Absolutely. It really means a lot, and it is very appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Failing Motherhood. Your kids are so lucky to have you. If you loved this episode, take a screenshot right now and share it in your Instagram stories and tag me. If you're loving the podcast, be sure that you've subscribed and leave a review so we can help more moms know that they are not alone if they feel like they're failing motherhood on a daily basis. And if you're ready to transform your relationship with your strong-willed child and invest in the support you need to make it happen, schedule your free consultation using the link in the show notes. I can't wait to meet you. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on.